The following podcast contains discussions of romanticized stalking, kidnapping, abuse, and murder. Also, spoilers. Lots of spoilers. Ready? Let's dig in. The opera ghost really existed. No matter what people say, no matter what they believe, the managers, the artists, the chorus girls, or the young ladies of the ballet, they call him a creature of imagination or superstition, or a silly illusion of the brain. But he was real, in all ways that matter. In flesh, and blood, and bone, and feeling. Probably too much feeling, if you ask me. Hey, I'm Gabby, and this is Digestibles, a podcast about all the books you were told to read but probably didn't. And today, we are going to talk about The Phantom of the Opera. You know, I'm really trying my best not to sing the title just in case we don't get in trouble because, you know, as a theater student and a lover of musicals, it's a little bit difficult to hold myself back. Anyway, about The Phantom of the Opera. Unlike most of the other books we've dealt with so far, this one isn't exactly high literature. It's more on the highly popular scale, spawning an iconic movie, an iconic musical, and what is the opposite of iconic movie based on the musical? But for a certain demographic, overdramatic teenagers, this story is totally irresistible, especially because of Andrew Lloyd Webber's musical adaptation, which heightens all the emotion and makes it all very, very sexy. No, really, it was so irresistible that when I was in my third year of high school, just ask anyone, everyone at the time was obsessed with Phantom of the Opera. Like, I can go about it in detail, but I'm pretty sure you wouldn't want to know about all the boring high school drama. Anyway, yeah, that was totally my jam in high school, and I could sing every word if you wanted me to, but please don't ask me to because, I'm an alto and I just do not have the range of Miss Christine Daae. Anyway, in contrast, the book is both dry and hilarious at the same time. Gaston Leroux was a journalist, and so you can see from the way that he writes that he wants to put in as many facts in it as he can. And most of these fictional facts are based on actual facts, like the infamous chandelier crash. The opera house is based on the Palais Garnier in Paris. In May 1896, one of the counterweights of its famous chandelier breaks and kills one of the concierges. And that's not the only detail that's ripped from the headlines. The underground lake? Yeah, it's more of a tank, but it's there. The cast? Mostly based on real people. The ghost? Still rumors, but even at his deathbed, Leroux insisted that it was based on something real. And maybe someday, someone will uncover that truth. Or maybe we'll never really know. But for now, we have this book. It starts with a prologue explaining some facts and sources about the strange happenings at the Paris Opera House in the 1880s. It involves the mysterious deaths and disappearances of a few people, leaving only one witness. The police think he's crazy because he blames it on a ghost. Yeah, sure. Leroux's investigation would like to prove that the ghost is very much real, thank you very much. Flashback! It's 30 years ago and it's chaos backstage at the opera. A gaggle of girls are gathered in a dressing room crying or screaming because they think they've seen a ghost. Not just any ghost, mind you. The ghost. For months, it's all anyone can talk about. Ghost this, ghost that. A silent, mysterious shadow that causes accidents wherever he goes and then vanishes immediately after. But what does it look like? Well, they heard from Joseph Bouquet that it's an overdressed skeleton with yellow skin, no nose, and barely any hair on that skull he calls a head. They heard Gabrielle also saw it while talking to that shady Persian who's always hanging around the opera. But wait, the fireman who inspects the cellar says that it's a floating head of fire without any body attached to it. Well, that seems like two different ghosts, though. Little Meg Gilly says maybe they shouldn't be gossiping about the ghost. Meg's mother thinks that it's bad luck to talk about it. But soon, Meg is spilling a big secret. You know box 5? The one on stage left? It's the ghost's favorite hangout. Her mother always hears its voice, though she's never seen it herself. All of a sudden, they hear heavy footsteps hurrying through the door. Someone bursts into the room. Joseph Bouquet is dead. He was seen hanging from the third-floor cellar between the set pieces under the stage. But by the time someone got to him, the rope had disappeared. Over on the stage side, it's the farewell concert for the opera's managers, and Christine Daae is giving the performance of her life. She's singing in place of the diva Carlotta, who became ill at the last minute. Nobody knew Christine could sing like that, and all the audience is entranced with this unknown Swedish girl who's about to become a big star. Especially Raoul, the Vicomte de Chagny. His brother, the Count Philippe, is amused with his brother's antics. Now he knows why Raoul keeps nagging him to go to the opera. His baby brother's finally becoming a man. Christine gets a standing ovation but faints on stage after her song. Raoul rushes to her side and manages to kick all of her other admirers out of her dressing room. When Christine wakes up, she sees Raoul and goes, "Who are you?" Raoul answers, "I'm the boy who rescued your scarf," then kisses her hand. Christine's just confused. Raoul turns red. Raoul asks to meet her later to tell her something important, and Christine says, "Sure, when I'm feeling better." He hovers outside the door until the maid and the doctor leave. Raoul's finally excited to get his alone time, but just when he's about to go in, he hears another man's voice. That's strange. And troubling. You can practically hear the slut-shaming wheels turning around in his head. The man is telling Christine she must love him, and Christine's like, "Isn't my singing enough?" Raoul tries to hear more, but Christine suddenly exits the room. Raoul waits for a glimpse of his rival, but no one else leaves the room. Curious, he goes inside, and it's empty. Over the next few days, Raoul would try to see Christine, but she's hiding from the world. Finally, he receives a note. Christine does remember him. She's going to the seaside now to visit her father's grave since it's his death anniversary tomorrow. Raoul follows her there, and we get a little background on how they met. Christine's father is a great violinist but a struggling musician. He takes his daughter with him from town to town, never really settling down, and they're like a two-person band. Young Raoul hears her sing one day and begins his lifelong habit of stalking her around. When a strong wind blows Christine's scarf away, he throws himself into the sea to get it back to her. Daddy Daae starts giving Raoul violin lessons, and they spend the summer together. One day, he tells them a fairy tale about a girl named Little Lot, who has golden hair and blue eyes just like Christine. Every night, the angel of music sings her to sleep. Again, that's me trying not to sing. Cue narrations.
No one ever sees the angel, but he is heard by those who are meant to hear him. He often comes when they least expect him, when they are sad and disheartened. Then their ears suddenly perceive celestial harmonies, a divine voice which they remember all their lives. Persons who are visited by the angel quiver with a thrill unknown to the rest of mankind, and they cannot touch an instrument or open their mouths to sing without producing sounds that put all other human sounds to shame. Then people who do not know that the angel has visited those persons say that they have genius. Little Christine asked her father if he had heard the angel of music. But Daddy Daae shook his head sadly, and then his eyes lit up as he said, "You will hear him one day, my child. When I am in heaven, I will send him to you."
Raoul catches up with Christine at an inn and immediately professes his love for her and that he can't live without her. "Really, dude, you're gonna do this now, on the day her father died?" Christine reacts by saying, it's complicated. Raoul immediately brings up the man in the dressing room. Christine turns pale and runs away. Later, they meet at the graveyard. Christine asks him if he remembers the story about the angel of music. Raoul says yes. And Christine says, "Well, that's the voice you heard." The angel is giving her voice lessons. Raoul laughs. He thinks someone is playing with Christine. She cries and runs away again. That night, Raoul follows Christine to the graveyard again. She's kneeling at her father's grave and praying. When midnight comes, Raoul hears music. Beautiful violin music like an angel is playing. When the music ends, Raoul hears the skulls and bones around him making noises. He thinks the invisible musician is leaving and hurries to catch him, but he's startled by a shadow with a head that looks like a skeleton. Raoul faints. Meanwhile, let's check in with the shenanigans at the opera. The ex-managers meet up with the new managers at the office. The new managers think that the opera ghost is a joke, but the ex-managers are all serious business about it. Like, dead serious. They stress that the ghost has a salary of 20,000 francs a month and for Box 5 to be kept empty at every production. Nice. I'm thinking, maybe I can do something with my backstage know-how. As a technical theater major, maybe I can get away with wearing a snazzy outfit and terrorizing people with my voice. Haha. Totally doable. Don't be surprised if it happens. I'm kidding. Maybe just a little bit. Anyway, let's move on. The new managers are outraged with this extortion. They think it's a prank and want the ghost arrested. Yeah, good luck with that. They decide that they're going to sell seats at Box 5 anyway. The next few days are so busy they forget about the opera ghost. Monsieur Ghost, however, has not forgotten about them. They receive a letter written in red ink. The ghost has found out that they sold his box and he's very disappointed. He's upset. He's so upset, he threatens them. In all caps. If you wish to live in peace, you must not begin by taking away my private box. You know things are about to get dramatic when it's written in all caps. But the managers still ignore the warning, and the next day, they receive word of an incident. Patrons had tried to enter the box that night, but some invisible person kept telling them that the seats were taken. Also, there was a weird laughter coming from the box all night. The managers call the boxkeeper, Madame Géry, to explain. She shrugs and says, "Well, it's that opera ghost. Didn't the old managers warn you? Last time, somebody broke a leg. And not in the theater sense. In the literal sense. If that wasn't obvious." The managers still won't believe her and want her fired. Also, they want to investigate the spooky stuff themselves. They plan to sit at Box 5 during the next performance so that they can catch the pesky prankster red-handed. Another great idea. One morning, they receive a letter from Mr. OG. This time, it has an ultimatum. Do they really want a war? 'Cause if not, they should 1. Give him back his private box. 2. Let Christine sing the starring role in the next performance. 3. Keep Madame Géry employed. And 4. Give him his allowance of 20,000 francs. If they refuse, he'll put a curse on the opera house. Of course, the managers laugh it off, and then one of the employees interrupts to say a horse has been stolen from the stable. The groom thinks it's the ghost, and the managers are like, "Silly, what's a ghost going to do with a horse?" I'm sure we'll find out about that later. La Carlotta also gets a letter from the ghost warning her not to perform or else she'll get a fate worse than death. Carlotta's annoyed because she thinks it's that nobody Christine trying to upstage her. She decides to fill the audience with her friends and fans to support her. She gets a second threatening letter. She ignores it. At the show, Christine is doing pretty bad for some reason. Raoul watches her with tears in his eyes. She had sent him a note saying she never wants to see him again. Philippe is worried over Raoul and annoyed at Christine for breaking Raoul's heart. Nevertheless, everything is going well. Until it's not. Suddenly, in the middle of a song, Carlotta croaks like a toad. Embarrassed, she tries to sing again, but she can't seem to stop croaking.
The house broke into a wild tumult. The two managers collapsed in their chairs and dared not even turn around. They had not the strength. The ghost was chuckling behind their backs. And at last, they distinctly heard his voice in their right ears. The impossible voice, the mouthless voice, saying,
She is singing tonight to bring the chandelier down.
With one accord, they raised their eyes to the ceiling and uttered a terrible cry. The chandelier, the immense mass of the chandelier, was slipping down, coming toward them at the call of that fiendish voice. Released from its hook, it plunged from the ceiling and came smashing into the middle of the stalls amid 1,000 shouts of terror. A wild rush for the doors followed.
The chandelier crashes into the audience, wounding many, but killing just one person. The concierge who replaced Madame Giry. 2 weeks pass. Christine has disappeared and Raoul is frantically looking for her. He asks the managers and they say Christine requested for a leave of absence for health reasons. He visits her foster mother, Madame Valerius, who tells him Christine is with her angel of music, who's been her music teacher for about 3 months now. She lets it slip that Christine likes Raoul, but the angel has forbidden her from marrying anyone. Raoul walks home discouraged, and his brother Philippe tries to cheer him up by saying Christine's been spotted in Paris. Raoul rushes to the area his brother points out, and at around 10 p.m., he notices a woman leaning her head out of a carriage window. It's Christine. He calls to her, but when the carriage draws near, the window is closed. The next morning, he receives a letter from Christine. She tells him to meet her at a masked ball at the opera in 2 nights. The ball is exceptionally grand. It's the party of the year. Everyone seems to be there. Raoul waits as instructed until a figure in black squeezes his fingers. He follows Christine through the crush of people. While doing this, he notices a figure dressed as the Red Death causing a scene in one of the rooms. Raoul recognizes it as the same person he saw at Daddy Daye's grave. Raoul wants to pick a fight with the guy, but Christine goes, "Stop! In the name of love!" See, okay, that's me trying not to sing this song either. Continuing, Raoul is confused. "You love me? When did that happen?" He bursts into tears, accuses her of lying, and insults her. "To think I was going to marry you, you opera wench!" And Christine is like, "You will regret calling me that. This opera wench is leaving now. Bye." If you're confused at this point, don't worry. So am I. Anyway, Raoul lets her go and spends the rest of the night looking for the Red Death guy, but can't find him. He ends up in Christine's dressing room. Christine's inside and she exclaims, "Poor Eric!" Raoul's all butthurt and now thinks, "Poor Eric? What about poor Raoul who has to worry about this Eric guy making moves on my dream girl?" Bro, didn't you just insult her just a while back and calling her an opera wench? What is up with that? Anyway, well, okay, if you've guessed it, although I think it's pretty obvious by now, Eric is the name of our theater ghost. Eric with a K, by the way, which somehow makes it funnier because as scary ghost names go, it's about as effective as a vampire named Varney or a wizard named, Tim. Or a werewolf named Bobby. Anywho, Raoul watches as Christine walks towards a mirror while a beautiful voice starts singing in the background. Christine touches her image and Raoul lunges to grab her, but suddenly he feels an icy blast and it seems like a multitude of Christines are spinning around him and he can't grasp even one of them. It happens so quickly too, and Raoul is left alone in the room, stewing in his jealousy. The day after, Raoul visits Mama Valerius again, and to his surprise, Christine is sitting there. They argue again, and Raoul calls the angel an imposter who's abusing her. Christine says, "Well, that's none of your business. You ain't my husband anyway. I don't plan to marry." Raoul then points out that she is wearing a wedding ring at the moment. Christine answers, "Yeah, still none of your business, dude." Raoul confronts her about a man named Eric in her dressing room. Christine turns white at another invasion of privacy, and Raoul's like, "I was only hiding in your closet because I love you." Bro, no, that is not how things work here. Ugh. The next day, Raoul visits Christine at the opera and they make up. He says he's leaving for a polar expedition in a month, so they pretend to be engaged like children playing house. About a week into the game, Raoul says he's not going to the North Pole anymore and Christine is frightened. She disappears again for 2 days and only returns to sing in another show. Raoul goes to her dressing room and begs her never to do it again. One day, Raul and Christine are sitting on the roof of the opera and Christine finally tells him everything. So, a mysterious voice starts singing to her in her dressing room and Mama V convinces her that it's the angel of music her father promised to send to her. Everything's mostly okay until the day she sees Raul in the audience at the theater. She's so excited and tells the angel how much she'd very much like to hop on that D train. The angel counters by ordering her not to fall in love with anyone on Earth, or else he'll go back to heaven. Christine chooses the angel cause I guess you should always choose the possessive disembodied voice who may or may not be your daddy's spirit stalking you over that possessive childhood friend/himbo who always seems to be stalking you. At least with one you get a career, but you still get someone stalking you. So when Raul finally speaks to her, she pretends not to remember him. What about her disappearances? Well, the night the chandelier falls, she rushes to her dressing room worried about the angel. She approaches the mirror and suddenly finds herself in a dark passage with a man wearing a cloak and a mask. She faints. When she comes to, the man helps her mount a horse. Remember the one that went missing? Yeah, that's the one. And leads her and the horse through the tunnels until they reach a lake. The man puts her on a boat and rows her to his hideaway. Like any angel in literature, he tells her not to be afraid. She's not in danger as long as she doesn't touch the mask. She realizes that the opera ghost and her angel of music are the same person. Otherwise known as Eric with a K, no last name. He sings her to sleep and when she wakes up, it's 5 days later. Eric tells her that he loves her and they begin to sing together because what else do you do when an opera ghost kidnaps you and confesses his love for you? Unfortunately, Christine is super curious about the man behind the mask, and, well, you know the saying about curiosity.
Suddenly, I felt a need to see beneath the mask. I wanted to know the face of the voice, and, with a movement which I was utterly unable to control, swiftly my fingers tore away the mask. Oh, horror! Horror! Horror!
Christine stopped at the thought of the vision that had scared her, while the echoes of the night, which had repeated the name of Eric, now thrice moaned the cry.
Horror. Horror! Horror!
So yeah, Christine isn't exactly happy. She was expecting an angel but got catfished by a demonic-looking creep instead. Eric shouts at her and tells her now she's seen his face, he'll never let her go. She's with him for 2 weeks and Christine pretends to be okay until he trusts her enough to take her out on carriage rides. Christine makes a deal with him. She can go out into the world as long as she always comes back to him. Which brings us to the present. Raul, ever the insecure little boy, asks, if Eric were good looking, would she still love him? Christine answers, if I didn't love you, I wouldn't kiss you. And then she kisses him. Way to answer the question, Christine. They make plans to run away together after her performance tomorrow, and as they leave the roof, it's revealed that Eric is hiding behind one of the statues watching them. The lovers bump into a mysterious figure in a long coat and pointed cap. He blocks them and tells them to go another way. Raul asks who he is and Christine shrugs. It's the Persian. No one really knows who he is, he's just always there. Christine notices that she lost the wedding ring Eric gave her. They search but can't find it. Raul goes home and finds Eric in his room. He shoots at him with his gun and sees blood on his balcony. Wow, that means the ghost is just a man. Who knew? But when they follow the trail, it leads them to a cat. Philippe thinks Raul is going crazy. He blames the opera wench. Raul wants to marry her, but Philippe won't agree. Over his dead body, he says. The next day, their quarrel is published in the gossip rags. During Christine's performance, the stage suddenly goes black. By the time they get the lights back on, Christine is gone. Backstage, the opera is in chaos again. They all think Christine has run away with Raoul, but why do it in the middle of a show? Wait until after, like any respectable artist. So they're really surprised when Raoul shows up asking where she is. Raoul just runs around the opera house, but people just laugh at him. He's about to storm the manager's office when someone puts a hand on his shoulder. "Leave Eric alone," a man whispers in caps lock. Raoul turns around and it's the shady Persian. The Persian just bows and departs. Okay then. Raoul speaks with the managers and tells them about Eric, but they all think he's crazy. A policeman reports that they saw his brother Philippe rushing away in a carriage, so they think he might have kidnapped Christine to prevent Raoul from marrying her. Raoul wants to badger the police for more info, but the Persian appears out of nowhere again. Raoul's like, "Who even are you and why do you keep doing that?" The Persian just replies, "I'm the Persian." Yes, that explains it perfectly. Raoul's like, "I don't have time for this," and the Persian goes, "Come with me if you want to save Christine's life." Raoul asks if he knows Eric, and the Persian just sighs heavily like he's so over it mentally, but this is just so typically Eric, you know? By the way, fans of the musical would note that the awesome character of the Persian was cut and replaced with a monkey music box, which I don't know if that's racist or, well, let's just stick with it for now. They head to Christine's dressing room. A servant meets them and hands them pistols. The Persian then demonstrates the secret behind the mirror. The book explains it better, but it involves pivots and counterbalances, and it's basically a revolving door. They plunge into darkness. The Persian warns Raoul to keep his hands up high at the level of his eyes. Raoul keeps forgetting because, well, he ain't the sharpest tool in the shed, if you get what I mean. And down they go, through the maze-like passageways until they reach the 5th cellar. They see a head on fire, with 2 yellow eyes and no body moving towards them. Yikes. They run away, but the head seems to be following them. They start to hear a faint noise. It becomes louder and louder until it's like thousands of nails scraping on a blackboard. Running doesn't seem to help, so the Persian and Raoul flatten themselves against the wall, waiting for their fate.
And the 2 companions, flat against their wall, felt their hair stand on end with horror. For they now knew what the 1,000 noises meant. They came in a troop, hustled along in the shadow by innumerable little hurried waves, swifter than the waves that rush over the sands at high tide, little night waves foaming under the moon. Under the fiery head that was like a moon. And the little waves passed between their legs, climbing up their legs, irresistibly, and Raoul and the Persian could no longer restrain their cries of horror, dismay, and pain, nor could they continue to hold their hands at the level of their eyes. Their hands went down to their legs to push back the waves, which were full of little legs and nails and claws and teeth.
Ugh, rats. They're ready to faint when the head of fire turns to them and says, "I'm the rat catcher, just let me pass." "Sure, bud, whatever you say." After they recover from the ordeal, Raoul asks the Persian if they're near the underground lake. The Persian replies that the lake is too dangerous and he's looking for another entrance. They reach the place where Joseph Bouquet's body was found. The Persian feels the wall until he finds what he's looking for, a secret door. The Persian signals Raoul to get his gun ready and they squeeze into the narrow hole in the wall. Then they drop down into darkness. The Persian lights his lantern and looks around. The walls of the room seem to be made of mirrors. He picks up a rope from the floor and flings it away in horror. He calls it the Punjab lasso. Apparently, it's Eric's favorite murder weapon. He throws it quickly around a person's neck and before they know it, they're suffocating. Which is why he tells Raoul to hold his hands up high. He checks out the room a bit more before announcing that they've accidentally fallen into Eric's torture chamber. Whoops. What is it with controlling guys in torture chambers? Jeez. And just when things are getting exciting, we get a backstory. Yes. So the Persian's been trying to get into Eric's underground lair for a while now. But the lake is guarded by a siren, and in one of the Persian's attempts, it reaches out and tries to drown him. Eric saves his life. The Persian goes, "Hey bro, you promised no more murders." And Eric plays it all innocent like, "Me? Murder? No." The Persian reminds him, "What do you call the chandelier then? And remember Persia?" Eric with a K just laughs. The chandelier was old, it could have fallen any time. And Persia was a long time ago. He's a changed man now ever since he fell in love. The Persian looks at him and thinks, "Yeah, I doubt that." So the Persian hangs around the opera and waits for Eric to murder stuff again. Back in the present, they're still stuck in the torture chamber. They hear Eric and Christine talking on the other side of the mirror. He's telling her to make a choice. Marriage or death? None of the above? Christine has until 11 p.m. to decide. Suddenly there's a sound like a house alarm and Eric leaves the room. Raoul calls out to Christine that he's here to save her if she can help them out a bit. Then Eric returns and continues his operatic hissy fit over why Christine can't love him back. "I don't know, dude. Maybe she'll like you better if you stopped screaming all your feelings at her every 2 seconds. And, I don't know, you can't see this, but sometimes you gotta quit it with the heart eyes. Kinda too much. Tone it down, bruh." Anyway, he notices that a bag is missing. Apparently, it has the key to the torture chamber in it. Christine tries to distract him. Ooh, she's never seen a torture chamber before. Can Eric give her a tour? Inside, the Persian face palms over her obviousness. So Eric tries to explain but keeps going off on a tangent because he's tired of living in the opera basement and wants to live in an ordinary house on an ordinary street with an ordinary wife, aka Christine. Christine starts to notice that it's getting very hot and Eric starts laughing like a maniac. Raoul starts banging on the walls of the chamber and they hear the sound of a body falling on the floor and being dragged out. Then Eric sings a death hymn for reasons we'll discover later. Oh, and yeah, the torture chamber. It's a room with an illusional forest that makes its occupants go crazy. Also, it has an electric heating system running through the walls which makes it really, really hot. So it's like a sauna. A torture sauna. Suddenly the heat becomes unbearable, but the Persian finally finds an exit. He presses on a nail on the floor and it opens to a cellar. Cool air rushes in and at first they're relieved. But that's before they see all the gunpowder below. So Eric's plan is to blow up the opera house. Nothing says I love you like terrorism, am I right? It's 5 minutes to 11 p.m., so Christine better hurry up with her choice. The Persian tries to talk Eric down. "Hey, buddy, remember that talk about you not killing people anymore?" But Eric doesn't mind a little mass murder once in a while. Last 2 minutes, he tells Christine. And Christine's like, "Okay, fine, I'll marry you." Inside the chamber, something cracks. The Persian and Raoul hear the hiss of water slowly filling up the room. So it's a sauna and a hot tub. Cool. Not so cool when you're drowning in it, though. The Persian yells at Eric to turn off the water, but nothing happens. The water keeps rising and the Persian eventually loses consciousness. When the Persian wakes up, he's lying in a bed while Raoul is sleeping on a sofa. Eric and Christine are looking over them. Christine gives him tea and Eric says that his wife saved them and he's taking them back up to the world to please her. The Persian falls asleep again and the next time he wakes up, it's in his own bed. As soon as he recovers, he goes to the house of the Count Philippe to ask after Raoul. He discovers that the Count is dead and Raoul and Christine are still missing. Philippe's body was discovered by the underground lake. He had followed Raoul down and sadly got caught by Eric's siren. The Persian goes to the police but nobody believes him. He decides to write everything down instead. One day, he gets a visitor. It's Eric, looking even more like death than ever. He's come to say goodbye to his old friend because he's dying of love. I don't think anyone can actually do that, but okay, for the sake of this story, I'll write. Sure. The Persian demands to know what happened to Christine and Raoul. Well, last Eric saw they were leaving his house being all lovey-dovey. He explains that after Christine agreed to marry him, he kisses her on the forehead and for the first time in his life, someone doesn't flinch when he touches them. This makes Eric break down in tears and Christine cries with him. He tears off his mask and they cry together for a while. It gives Eric his first feeling of happiness after a lifetime of people running away from him. He tells Christine to stop crying. She can marry her boyfriend if she promises to bury him when he dies. Eric gives back the gold wedding ring she had lost and Christine kisses him on the forehead. Then, he lets them go. Eric gives the Persian a couple of instructions for his death and then goes back to the opera. It's the last time the Persian sees him. 3 weeks later, an ad is published in a newspaper. Eric is dead. The book ends with an epilogue, which is basically a Scooby-Doo-like reveal on how all Eric's tricks were done. Also, we get an Eric backstory. He was born in a small French town and his parents hated him because he's ugly, so he runs away to join the circus. Then somehow he ends up in Persia and becomes a favorite of the Shah. See, Eric might be hideous on the outside, but he's a genius on the inside. Architecture, engineering, ventriloquism, music, magic, murder, you name it, he'll be awesome at it. He does a couple of assassinations here and there, and then he builds a palace for the Shah, torture chamber included. But now Eric knows too much, so the Shah orders him killed. For reasons unknown, the Persian saves him and gets banished in the process. Eric travels around for a bit, with the Persian hot on his heels until they end up in Paris, where Eric helps build the opera house, complete with the torture chamber. Again. Then, Leroux notes that a strange skeleton was found at the opera house. It was wearing a gold ring, so I guess it's safe to say that Christine did go back to fulfill her promise. In the epilogue, Leroux writes of Eric, "With an ordinary face, he would have been one of the most distinguished of mankind. He had a heart that could have held the empire of the world, and in the end, he had to content himself with a cellar." Yeah, that Eric. Just another ordinary guy with a torture chamber in his basement. But the book does bring up that old nature versus nurture debate about evil. Maybe he's born with it. Maybe it's years and years of emotional and physical abuse. Eric wasn't born a monster, but he became one because everyone treated him like one. So really, can we blame him for having the emotional maturity of a spoiled toddler? Does it excuse all the murder? I'll leave that for you to decide. But the book is practically woke for its time, saying, hey, maybe we should treat all people like, people? We have Eric as the stand-in for the outcasts, the disabled, and the undesirables mistreated by society. And we also have the character of the Persian, a person of color who is just an all-around awesome guy and probably the closest thing the book has to a hero, which is really rare for a book written by a white person before the 20th century. And here we are, over 100 years later, and I don't think I can say that the world has changed that much. Maybe in the sense we're collectively like the Phantom, ugly and angry and terribly problematic, yet also capable of growth and change. Just waiting for a Christine to show us that a little kindness goes a long way. Even if we are like Eric's, I'm just saying, please, skip out on the murder. Thank you. You for listening. I know that was kind of confusing, but I hope I was able to make the Phantom of the Opera a little bit easier for you to digest. Anyway, I'm Gabby, and you can find me at GabbyPasquaVox on Instagram and Twitter, or use the hashtags DigestiblePodcast. Please do let me know what you thought of this episode. And, if you want to jam out to some musical theater and Phantom of the Opera, just let me know. Special thanks to Thor and Merrick for providing the narrations and to Jazz for composing our theme music. Anyway, tune in next week to find out about our next Victorian monster. Talk to you then. Bye! Digestibles is part of Connect, a podcast network, bringing together entertaining stories to spark your imagination. For more awesome content, follow us on social media @Connect Podcasts.